Hi all, welcome to our sales workshop. We'll probably give people just a few minutes just to log in and then we'll get kick started. I'll give it about 23 seconds and then off we go. Let's kick on. So welcome to our sales workshop entitled Internet Fundamentals, Why the Right Connection Matters. So my name is Dave Sokolovich. I'm the channel manager here at Hosted Network. I've been in the telecommunications game for about 14 odd years, and I've been with providers like Pacific Internet, Vocus, Superloop, Over the Wire, Swoop Wireless, and I've seen a few gotchas in my time with customers running into issues, and it's mainly because they simply are using the wrong connection for the situation they're in. We'll go through a few things. Firstly, we'll go through some technical terms and their meanings. We'll talk about quality, not just speed is important. We'll go through some connectivity types and we'll go through some pros and cons of each one as well. We'll also talk about when things break, service level agreements, and also mean time to repairs. We'll also talk about how to mitigate connectivity issues. We'll talk about connecting multiple sites. I'll also go over how we can help at Hosted Network, and then I'll answer any of your questions at the end. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, please ask them in the chat, and then I'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation. So some technical terms. I don't want to bore you with too much technical information, but here are some terms that you need to be aware of. The first one is data packets. So when we're moving data around, we aren't doing it in one big chunk. Data is chopped up into smaller chunks and they're called data packets. Then we send these in sequential order from destination and then put it back together in a useful format. Another term to be aware of is a term called latency. Latency is the time it takes for those data packets to travel from source to destination. And latency is measured in milliseconds. Another term you should be aware of is jitter. Now, jitter is the measurement or the variation of latency. And again, that's done in milliseconds. Another term is packet loss. So packet loss doesn't just refer to packets that are lost, but also refers to packets that are sent out of order or packets that arrive too late to be used. Another term you should be aware of is contention. Contention or congestion, this refers to how many other users are trying to use the same path or the same infrastructure. Quality of service or QoS, that's the prioritization of different data types. And typically you prioritize voice and video data packets over things like email. And best effort. If you do have kids, you probably have used this term before of you get what you get, you don't get upset. Best effort means minimal to no guarantees. Your service could have speed, latency, jitter, and packet loss issues and still be deemed a working service. Now, the speed of your connection is important, but the quality and the consistency of that data flow is also critical. So if any of those data characteristics such as latency, jitter, and packet loss are too high, it will show up in that lagging video call or that choppy voice call or a remote test desktop session just hanging as it's waiting for the information it needs. In most cases, if you run a speed test over the affected service, you'll be getting around the speed that you're expecting, but you're not getting the quality the end user is needing. So as you can see on the slide there, a lot of applications don't need a lot of speed to work well. A voice call will work perfectly well on one of those old dial-up internet connections. These applications do, however, need low latency, little to no jitter, and next to zero packet loss to work well. And these applications need a consistent performing connection, not necessarily a fast connection. While we're talking about speed, speed comes in two different delivery types, symmetrical and asymmetrical speed. So asymmetrical speed means the download speed is higher than the upload speed. This type of speed delivery is designed primarily for home users who need a greater download speed for applications like stream video. Think of your Netflix, your Prime, your YouTube, gaming and stream music. These sort of applications tend to be a one-way conversation, so they need the higher download. A symmetrical speed service means that you get the same speed both ways at the same time. Symmetrical speed services are designed for business users. And for applications like email, video conferencing, think your Zoom or your Google Meet or your Teams, voice calls, and most business applications like your Office 365, Google Docs, etc. These applications tend to have an even two-way conversation. There are also two different ways to deliver data. One's over a cable, wired, and one's over radio signals being through the air, wireless. Now, a wired service is delivered via cable and is now tend to be delivered over optical fiber cable, with a few instances where the copper phone lines are still being used. Fiber optic cable is the perfect way to deliver data. All packets going in one end of the optical cable will always pop out the other side. If there's any issues with fiber services, they always tend to be at the switching levels or above, or someone's just physically just cut the line. Now, I've classified wireless services as your mobile data like your 4 and 5G, fixed wireless, and your satellite services. It's a service that needs an antenna to work and is delivered via air with radio signals. These are typically classed as best effort services, and that's because the delivery is done via a variable medium, air. So on a good day, air is a great way to deliver data. But issues such as humidity and rain can slow down and disperse that radio signal, which adds packet loss, extra latency, and jitter. So let's go over a few connection types that you would recommend to an end user. NBN TC4. Now, TC4 is your standard home and small office connection. It's available in most, if not all, homes and business offices. It's delivered as an asymmetrical speed. So that is a higher download speed than an upload speed. With TC4, there's a variety of different speed options and depends on which technology type it's delivered on. And the speeds are not guaranteed on TC4. They are up to a maximum speed. For instance, if you get a 100/40 service, it actually means that it will run up to 100 megabits per second download speed and up to 40 megabits per second upload speed. The actual speed you get on your service can greatly differ from the stated speed that you've bought. Remember, TC4 is a best effort service with minimal guarantees. TC4 is really designed for home and small business users. And also TC4 can be delivered by a whole bunch of different acronyms, as you can see on the slide there. FTTP, or fiber to the premise, is fiber all the way from the NBN network to a termination box in your home or small office. Awesome service if you can get it. FTTB, FTTN, and FTTC still uses the old portion of the old copper phone lines, but at varying lengths. So fiber to the basement, FTTB, still uses the building's internal wiring for the last bit of delivery. FTTC, fiber to the curb, will use a copper phone line terminated in your street and then fiber back to the NBN network. And FTTN, or fiber to the node, will still use copper line terminated streets away. The speed and performance of these services depend on the length and the state of the copper. And remember, the whole reason for NBN was the old internet servers weren't up to scratch because they were using old copper phone lines. Unfortunately, those old copper phone lines are still being used in these TC4 services. So these services will not run at full speed due to the copper lines acting like a choke point. TC4 can also be delivered via the old HFC network. That was the old pay TV cable networks that Telstra and Optus run. I think they've got rid of most of that because it was rubbish. TC4 can also be delivered via fixed wireless and satellite. And these are the worst of the lot and should be avoided at all times. Not only do they suffer from issues inherent of a fixed wireless service, they're also very highly contended and oversubscribed. Now, NBN even acknowledged this, and they've set aside another $750 million to fix it. Unfortunately, though, you don't get a choice of which technology used to deliver TC4 to your site. Again, you get what you get with TC4. Now, this is quite a busy slide, and I've taken this off the NBN's website, but this is NBN's way of blaming everyone else for speed and performance issues. And unfortunately, they're sort of right. Speed and performance of a service can be affected by a carrier on top of the technology they're using. So the issue of delivering a high quality 100 megabit service is not a technical one, it's more of a commercial one. So I've added there and then the right-hand side, the wholesale costs of delivering an NBN service without any contention. And the reason you'll never get a full speed service on your TC4 is no one's going to pay that sort of cost. Contention, congestion, oversubscription, whatever you want to call it, that adds extra latency, jitter, and packet loss to a service. With TC4, you do get what you pay for. And remember, QoS does not fix the issues on a TC4 service. Adding a QoS or quality of service setting on your router doesn't fix the issue further upstream. All it does is tell the router which data packets to accept and send first. What you do need is a network further upstream to recognize and honor those quality of service settings for it to work properly. Now, because TC4 is primarily a residential or small business service, when things go wrong, it takes a while for it to be fixed. Now, this information comes from the NBN website as well. So just put things in perspective, a standard fault fix time for NBN TC4 has their support team working on issues between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on a business days only, with a rectification time of 5 p.m. the next day. So that means if your service goes down Friday night, NBN will do nothing about it over the weekend. The first time they'll look at your issue is Monday morning, 8 a.m. Then they don't have to fix it until Tuesday, 5 p.m. It's 4 days. Add in a holiday period, and you're down for much longer. So to get NBN to look at your issue sooner, they charge extra per month for this thing called the ESLA. Now, we highly recommend adding an ESLA to your business service because NBN don't budge on this commitment. Escalations don't work if the issue is still within their standard SLA timeframes. So if you are providing a TC4 service to a small size customer who can't handle being down for 2 to 4 days or work over the weekend, please add an ESLA or provide a connection that's designed for business or add some sort of redundancy. Don't rely on it by itself. Now, I haven't put this information here just to scare you off using TC4, as it does have its place. It's quite cheap and economical, but I want to put it in perspective compared to some of the other services I'm about to talk about. Now, most businesses and enterprise-grade networks run on Ethernet services. These are delivered in symmetrical speed setup and are designed for business-type applications. Most are delivered with guaranteed speeds, choice of contention, choices of quality of service types, and they have service level agreements on performance. Now, if a building already has Ethernet service delivered to it, install times are pretty quick. However, if the fiber needs to be built to the site, it does take a fair while, around 60, 80 business days, which is 3 to 4 months. Also be aware that all carriers don't build over the Christmas break for 4 weeks. So if you order late in the year, add another month or so to the install timeframe. Now, this is called the install embargo period, and I've seen many customers get caught out on this. And just to put this all in perspective, if you have a new service that needs to be built and you put the order in September, it is possible that it could be delivered in February the following year. So I suggest if you have any Ethernet services that need to be delivered this year, get them ordered now to beat the install embargo. Now, I also highly recommend if an end customer is thinking of moving into a new premise, to check all connectivity options before they sign the lease. So never assume a building has or even can get an Ethernet service. This also includes relocating an office. Just because you get it at one site doesn't mean you'll get it to the next site. Most Ethernet services have options for the network to honor your quality of service settings and prioritize data traffic based on your needs. This means that your voice and video applications will not only have priority at the router level, also through the network as well. So the main providers of Ethernet in Australia are Telstra, NBN, Vocus, and AEPT. And there's a couple of small providers out there as well. I'm not going to mention Optus because they don't really have a delivery network as such. They just resell everyone else's stuff. So the first carrier we'll talk about is Telstra. Telstra have a product called Telstra Ethernet Access, or EA. Telstra has the largest delivery footprint in Australia, and simply because they've been around the longest. They have a choice of contention on their EA product. They have choices of speeds on the EA from 10 megabits per second up to 2 gigabits. They have a choice of SLA response and mean time to repair as well. The best all-round out of all those is probably Business Plus. Their support guys will look at your ticket 24/7, so right through the day. They'll give you a 60 minutes response time and a 12-hour restoration time. It's pretty good. They also deliver 4 classes of service or quality of service. They have an expedited, priority, premium, and standard. For most of our customers, standard and premium works really well. You don't use expedited and priority for very large enterprise customers. Now, when you're doing a qualification for a Telstra EA service, Telstra will return one of 3 options. The first option they can come back with is green. The site has fibre installed or it's very close. Install is normally free on a 36-month term and it's pretty quick. They can also return an amber response. So that means that Telstra fibre is not in the building, but it's close by. They will calculate a special linkage charge, which will include in your installation price when you order. On our partner portal, we actually give you that special linkage charge up front before you order the service. Telstra can also come back when you do a qualification and come up with a red. So that means that Telstra need to do a build study to determine the cost of the install. And what you do is you'll pay Telstra about $2,000 to do this build study, and they'll come back to you with a price. And you can either accept or reject that price. If you do accept it, Telstra will waive that build study fee. The main caveat with Telstra EA is don't assume you can upgrade speed easily or for free. They might need to add additional infrastructure to support the upgrade speed, which takes time, and they might pass that cost on. Other than that, it's a rock solid service. Telstra EA is everywhere. The next one we'll talk about is NBN Enterprise Ethernet. Now, Enterprise Ethernet, or EE, is a separate network to their TC4 service. It is their business grade service. It is completely separate. The coverage is growing. It's still a growing network. They do speeds from 10 megabits per second to nearly 10 gigabits per second, and they provide a couple of different traffic classes. With NBN, in terms of quoting, they'll be up front with any extra install fee. NBN tend to put a big circle around an area and say it's available, but they won't tell you whether it's actually the building is actually the fibre is actually in the building. The good thing about NBN EE is you can add a high ESLA, which is above the 10-hour, 12-hour, 25/7 support. And those ESLAs is what I talked about a bit earlier. Now, like Telstra's EA, it's a rock solid service. It just isn't everywhere like Telstra's EA. Please keep that in mind when you're looking at relocating. The next carrier we'll talk about is Vocus. Vocus provide a service called Ethernet Private Line, or EPL. This is more of a carrier grade service. It is typically delivered in CBD and metro areas and is a true one-to-one contention service. There is no one else using that line except you. They have a whole bunch of different speed options, and they provide a couple of cool things. One is all-in-one bundling. So that means you can bundle a whole bunch of VLANs into their own VLAN. You can also create some QoS settings, and the Vocus network will honor those settings throughout. So Vocus EPL, it's flexible and it's a bomb-proof service if you can get it. The next carrier we'll talk about is APT's Fibre 400 or Fibre 1000. It's a great flexible Ethernet product. It is in a lot of places, mostly metro and CBD, but it's more geared towards end customers, not wholesalers. And I say that for 2 reasons. One is that the way they allow you to split out the services mean that end customers can put a network together with no real networking skills. Those split outs are really there to help bundle in other TPG services. And the second reason I say it's more geared toward end customers is the retail prices on their website. So your margins are set by TPG. In saying that, at the price point, it's a very cheap service for the speed you're getting. And if you're using this purely as a large internet pipe, it fits the bill. It's great. Just don't expect too much from this service in terms of performance or technical support. And remember, the speed on this is not guaranteed. This is an up to product, so up to 400 megabits per second or up to 1,000 megabits per second. Let's talk about wireless. Wireless options include your 4 and 5G data plans, 5G fixed wireless, also traditional point-to-point fixed wireless, and satellite services. Now, the main differences between these wireless services is the radio spectrum they use and also the distance between the end user and base station. So you probably hear some terms called license spectrum. License spectrum is a radio frequency band only one carrier can use. So that means there's no radio interference on those services from other providers, which is illegal and the fines are huge. License spectrum is a radio frequency that everyone can use. So if someone else is using the same frequency as your service in the area, you will get radio interference and that will screw with your service. Now the distance between the end user and the base station is critical as well, because shorter the distance, the less thick, moist air the radio signal needs to travel through. This issue is called rain fade, and it happens during storms and heavy rain. Rain fade adds extra latency, jitter, and packet loss to a service. There are 5G and 5G fixed wireless services out there. They're still newer technology, and the coverage is a bit patchy at the moment. So if you were going to put that in the customer site, I would test the 5G signal at the customer site. 5G, you can get some great speeds on that service, but it's not a consistent speed. You'll find the speed will go up and down during the day. These services are run on licensed spectrum, which is fantastic, and the base stations are closer to the end customer, typically only a couple hundred meters away, which is great. Another service out there is called fixed wireless, and that relies on a permanent antenna being installed on the customer's roof. The carrier needs to have clear line of sight from that roof to their base station for the service to work. Now, these are normally delivered on unlicensed spectrum and base stations up to 10 kilometers away. Rain fade do affect these services a bit more. Now, last and least is your satellite services, and satellite is your last resort if you have nothing else available. And the reason behind that is because the latency on these services are huge, typically 500 to 700 milliseconds. Starlink and OneWeb are providers that are exception to this, as their satellites are much closer to the ground. I think Starlink has a latency around 45 milliseconds, which is pretty good. These are typically delivered via licensed spectrum, but the base stations can be thousands, if not tens of thousands of kilometers away. And that's the reason for the latency. It's just a big distance for the data to travel. Now, I recommend using a wireless service if there's nothing else available, or you need a redundant option to a wired service. These services are not designed to be a primary connection for business, as their performance are variable, and most of them are best effort. So when you're recommending the right connection, it involves understanding what the customer is using it for. So I'd recommend, even before you talk to the customer, it's best to do the background work and find out what's actually available at their site. Our portal can actually show you all the carriers and all the technology types that can be delivered to that particular site. Now, if the customer's already running an internet service, you could run some simple network monitoring that gives you a lot of information, such as whether they're maxing out their current connection, whether the connection has any issues. This will give you a great baseline to work off when you're trying to recommend a service. I'd also recommend asking the customer a whole bunch of questions to scope out why are they using the internet service and how they're using it, and also how they use it in the future. Scoping out the right connection isn't just multiplying the number of end users by this magical number. And remember, there's the price difference between 100 megabits per second service and 250 megabit service is around $100 a month. The difference between a 250 megabit service and a 500 megabit service is around $150 a month. So it doesn't cost that much more to provide double the speed or add a higher quality connection to your customer. Now, unfortunately, when wired services break, they break horribly. All wired services are run in conduits located under a footpath. So when a cut happens, it affects all carriers. So I've got a picture here of a whole bunch of conduits running under a footpath. And as you can see, they're all right next to each other. So I was actually working at the carrier when that top left-hand picture happened. The contractor did the right thing. They called Dollar Before You Dig hotline, but the data was wrong. It had the conduits much deeper than they were. So not only did he cut the fiber with a concrete saw, then he ripped it all up with a backhoe. And as you can see, all those conduits are right next to each other. So it didn't affect just the carrier I was with, but it affected all other carriers as well. The bottom left-hand picture happened in 2018 when Telstra had a fire in a pit near Orange in regional New South Wales. So this took down most of Telstra's services on the eastern seaboard, including the mobile network, emergency services, and 000. The middle picture is what happens when a vertical borer hits a cable. Not pretty. Last week, an Australian carrier got hit with a vertical borer and took out 8 conduits and thousands of cables with them. The bottom right-hand picture shows what happens when a horizontal borer hits a fiber connection. So the reason I'm showing you this is some of these issues aren't a 5-minute fix. Fiber cuts can and do happen, and all the yelling at the carrier or escalations don't make these sort of issues get fixed any faster. These issues take days, if not weeks, to fix. And just going back to the carrier got hit last week, they need to rebuild 450 meters of new network of conduits. That's going to take weeks. Now, a lot of people rely on service level agreements as their way of mitigating these sort of risks. So SLAs, or mean time to repair commitments, are essentially just a commercial construct. They don't stop these issues from happening, and they don't make these fixes go any faster. And just to put service level agreements rebates in perspective, if you're paying $300 per month for a service and it goes down for 2 hours, the 10% rebate on that is $30. If it's down for 8 hours, the 25% rebate is $75. So no SLA rebate will ever compensate you for the loss of business incurred during the outage. I mean, $75 doesn't compensate you for 10 workers just sitting there twiddling thumbs for hours. So the best way to mitigate downtime is adding redundancy. You are better off mitigating the risk of downtime to the end customer yourself. And adding redundancy is a great way of keeping your customers working while any of these issues are being resolved. We all pay insurance for our possessions, and adding redundancy is your way of providing an insurance policy for your end customer's business continuity. So when you are scoping out redundant links, you should provide carrier redundancy and path redundancy as well. There's no point buying 2 Telstra services and having them both down at the same time because Telstra's having a bad day. There's also no point getting a Telstra and a Vocus wired service and having someone cut up the duct and the fiber down the street. They'll both be offline. So I recommend using a wired service as your main connection, as you can see there on the screen, and then a wireless service as a backup. And when you're going to do that, buy them from 2 different carriers. That way, this will provide you with path redundancy and carrier diversity as well. Now, there are a number of setup options for redundancy. Most people run this in primary redundant setup. I personally like the bonding or load balancing options because then you're using both services at the same time, which keeps them alive and you know they're working. There's nothing worse than having a connection break and find out your redundant service won't kick in. Now, if you need to connect multiple sites, you can do that via 2 different ways. You can do it via a private network or via SD-WAN. Both have pros and cons, and you can read those on the slides there. I like the idea of SD-WAN because you can connect multiple different providers and different technologies together with an intelligent overlay. Any adds, moves, and changes can be done easily with SD-WAN, whereas with a private network, it tends to be more set in stone and stuck with the same provider. Now, the SD-WAN appliances also monitor your links for latency, packet loss, and stability, and dynamically adjust the load on each one to maintain peak performance. And most SD-WAN appliances provide information on any issues your connections might be experiencing, and some of them even try to correct it. The only caveat I'd add to SD-WAN is there are a number of providers out there who sell this product on promise it can fix all network problems. Please don't use SD-WAN to try and fix a crap connection. You're just polishing up a turd. How we can help. So at Hosted Network, there are a number of ways we can help with your connectivity needs. On our partner portal, we can provide a qualification tool. So simply pop in an address and we'll return which carriers and what technology type is available at each site. Great when you need to do all that pre-work before you talk to your customer. When you're ready to order connection, you can then add an ESLA if you're ordering NBN, extra IP addresses, manage routers, and submit that order via the portal with no paperwork. Nice and easy. On our partner portal, we also do have a TC4 diagnostic tool that will not only help you diagnose a problem, but then you can maybe fix a problem by resetting a port, resetting a device. You can see whether a router is connected or not. And then if you do submit a support ticket, all that diagnostic information goes to NBN and helps them resolve the issue faster. If you have a connection with us, which the end customer is having issues with, you can also add monitoring on that connection so you can get the right data to help diagnose the issue. It might be a time-based problem. Hosted network, we are carrier agnostic, so we'll advise which is the recommended connection suited to each customer's specific needs. We are going to push a particular carrier at you. All our connections can be tied back privately and securely to our hosted services like infrastructure as a service, backup and disaster recovery as a service, and all our hosted voice options. And also we can help with post-implementation with our 24/7 network operations center. And we can also help with invoicing the service via our rebilling platform. We can also help secure all your connections from a carrier level as well. So we have teamed up with Sophos to provide a cost-effective hosted centralized UTM firewall to secure all your customers behind. This works perfectly with our internet services and SD-WAN offerings. Also, if you're deploying Sophos endpoint security, that dovetails perfectly into our SD-WAN service to provide end-to-end managed security. And if you'd like more information on this product, please let us know. So in conclusion, providing a quality connection that's fit for purpose will not only provide a great end user experience, but will save you time and money by not having to troubleshoot issues caused by things that are out of your control. As always, we're here to help. So if you're unsure of what to recommend to your customer, please contact myself or your account manager who can help. Now, if you'd like some more technical training, please use the QR code on the screen to book a time. That will be a technical training session rather than the sales one that I've done. And also, if you go into IT Nation conference next week on the Gold Coast, feel free to pop over and say hello to us. Thank you for your time, guys. Let's go through a few questions, and I've got Meryl on the line as well. She'll ask the questions that come through on chat.
Hey guys. Thanks, Dave, for that presentation. And also thanks, guys, for joining us. If you don't know who I am, I have been MIA for 3 weeks overseas. I am the Partner Success Manager here at Hosted Network, responsible for all things enablement, training, marketing events. Now, firstly, before we get stuck into some questions, because there's a couple that have come through, polishing a turd, I am pocketing that phrase. Thanks, Dave. And also, guys, if you do have any questions, pop them into the chat and the Q&A. We can answer them in this session. The first question that came through while you were chatting was around the ESLA. So, Dave, what's the cost to add an ESLA to an NBN service?
So the costs are variable depending on what you would like. We provide the costs on our partner portal, and we also have it in our price book as well. So if you need to know that, if you're a customer of ours, we can definitely help you with those costs and also explain the differences between the ESLAs.
I believe as well, NBN Enterprise Ethernet, that also includes an ESLA by standard.
Yeah, so they have their standard 24/7 12-hour response as standard, but you can add extra ESLAs on top of that if you'd like a faster response and a faster resolution time.
Perfect. Another one that we have that came through is, what do I do if I have a connection that has the issues that you've mentioned?
Oh, so if you have a connection that is having latency, jitter, or packet loss problems, first thing to do is actually go back to your carrier and see if they can resolve it. Also, setting up the right expectation on those services as well. If it is best effort, that's the best you're going to get. If that's the case, I'd recommend changing provider.
Cool. There was a question that I actually had, because you mentioned embargo period, which I believe is the cutoff period for this service delivery of connections. So
That's right.
When do partners find out about the actual embargo period? Because they do need to set expectations to their customers as well on that.
Well, embargoes tend to happen around sort of mid-December to mid-January. It's about a 4-week period. So it depends on which service you're buying. So if you're buying a service that is already in the building, it shouldn't affect it too much. If it's a service that needs 40 to 60 business days to be installed, then we need to be upfront with that as well. My caveat was if you have anything that needs to be built, I'll be ordering the service now, so you can get it in before Christmas. And working at a telco, everyone seems to put all their orders in about September, October. So all jams in one spot, and they can only build so much at a time. And then you have these really crazy conversations, you know, late November, early December, going, sorry, you ain't going to get till February. All carriers don't charge for the service until it's installed, so it doesn't actually cost you anything to get it in earlier.
Got it. Okay, that's a good heads up. We'll have to send a notification to partners just to let them know about that.
Yep.
Any other questions coming through to the Q&A? We'll leave a little bit of time, but if not, we can wrap up the session today.
All right, guys, if we've got no questions, thanks a lot for your time. Hopefully I explained everything. If I haven't, please ping me and I can help you out with any questions that you do have. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
This session is going to be recorded, so if you did want to share this with other people in your team, you can do that, and our marketing team will send that to you guys within the next couple of days. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.